Welcome back to the Good Morning Show on WBOK 1230 AM, where we deal with our culture, our concerns, and our questions. And we have so many questions about reparations these days. That's been a really hot subject, Professor.
Yeah, whenever you talk about reparations, it's definitely going to spark conversation. We have some experts here joining us this morning on the Good Morning Show. We have Mr. Bradley Bain, Dr. Michael Berenbaum. I hope I said that correctly. Berenbaum. Thank you, Sally Ann. And Miss Tamara Fish.
Tamara Fish. Yes.
I did pretty good with these names this morning. We're talking about an HBCU speaker series, The Case for Reparations, Past and Present. That's going to be today, Tuesday, November 9th at 7 p.m., I think, right here at Xavier University.
Yes, it's going to be a Zoom conference, so you can
log
register
and
you can watch at home. And I want to start with Dr. Bain, who is the co-chair of the Center for Jewish-Multicultural Affairs, who is sponsoring this. So tell us about the conference tonight.
Well, thank you, and good morning. My name, as you'd mentioned, is Bradley Bain, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Goldring Family Foundation Center for Jewish-Multicultural Affairs. Just a brief background about the center itself. It's an in-house initiative of the Jewish Federation of Greater New Orleans. And since 1913, the Jewish Federation of New Orleans has served as the central address for our local Jewish agencies and faith-based organizations. The center has as its core mission fostering relations between our local Jewish community, the local African-American, Latinx, and multi-faith communities, as well as enhancing opportunities for the LGBTQ, Jewish and non-Jewish communities alike. We seek to build and maintain strong, mutually beneficial, and lasting partnerships. As you mentioned today, we're here as part of our ongoing HBCU, the Historically Black Colleges and Universities Speaker Series. This series is aimed at connecting the Jewish and African-American communities in the greater New Orleans area on relevant topics of mutual interest, hosted, of course, by our local HBCUs. This evening's program is in partnership with Xavier University, and as you mentioned, it's on Zoom and free and open to the entire community to participate. Please go to jewishnola.com/HBCU to sign up and register to get your Zoom link.
And tell us,
to give us a little taste, and to help us explore the history of German reparations following the Holocaust, the current call for slave reparations, and the 83rd anniversary of Kristallnacht, I am honored to introduce our two guests this morning. Dr. Michael Berenbaum is a writer, lecturer, and teacher consulting in conceptual development of museums and the historical development of films. He's the director of the Siggy Ziering Institute, exploring the ethical and religious implications of the Holocaust, and a professor of Jewish studies at the American Jewish University in Los Angeles. He has served as the executive editor of the second edition of the now classical Encyclopedia Judaica. For 3 years, he was president and chief executive officer of the Survivors of the Shoah Visual History Foundation. Michael was the project director of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, overseeing its creation, and later directed its research institute, and has developed museums across the globe. Our next guest, Tamara Fish, is the co-founder of Kashbar, an oasis for diverse Jewish community. Previously, she served as president of the Jewish Multiracial Network, president of Congregation Tehillah, and the assistant director of the Office of the University Chaplain at Columbia. She also served as faculty in the Department of Religion of the Manhattan College for over 10 years. An African-American Jew, Tamara is the author of Ahead of Yom Kippur, How Can You Repair Relationships with African-American Jews?, and a member of both the Coalition for a Diverse Harvard and Harvard Progressive Jewish Alumni. Lastly, although he will not be joining us this morning, tonight's HBCU series will also include Dr. V.P. Franklin, Distinguished Professor Emeritus of History and Education at the University of California, Riverside. He probably needs little introduction here, though, as I might add that he was also a fellow at our own Midlow Center at the University of New Orleans. Again, for tonight's program, please go to jewishnola.com/HBCU to register. But without further ado, let me turn it back over to you to get the conversation started this morning.
Well, thank you very much. And I want to ask Dr. Berenbaum, this is a very solemn anniversary, the anniversary of Kristallnacht. And I want you to explain to people about the night of broken glass and how this situation that the German community, and particularly the Jewish community in Germany and Poland, were affected by this, and is there any connection between what the hatred that's rising now and what happened on this anniversary?
Well, let me begin by talking about what happened in 1938, November 9th and 10th, 1938. What happened was that the synagogues of Germany, which then included Austria, were burned. These were public events that took place in the sight of the entire community because they were mainly in downtown areas and they were in prominent positions. People brought their children to see it. More than 1,000 synagogues were burned. More than 7,000 Jewish businesses were destroyed. And then you had the arrest of essentially 30,000 Jewish men aged 16 to 60 who were transported to concentration camps. The Germans gave it a very fancy name, Kristallnacht, because crystal is beautiful, and what's intriguing in contemporary Germany is that it is called the November Reichspogroms. Pogroms are essentially eruptions of illegal behavior overlooked or sanctioned by the police. You had a very interesting phenomenon that also took place, which is that the fire department was instructed to go to the fires but not put them out, but rather only if the buildings next door were to catch fire. Only if the buildings next door were to catch fire were they to begin to take out their hoses. So firemen report in their diaries that this is the first time they stood back at a fire. One fireman wrote that I usually am assigned to put out fires. This is the first time I was assigned to start them. This was what we historians call the end of the beginning and the beginning of the end. It was the end of Jewish life in Germany as it was known, and it was the beginning of the systematic destruction of the Jews, which culminated in what is called the final solution to the Jewish problem, the mass murder, the annihilation, what the Nazis called extermination of the Jews in Europe. And it not only impacted Poland, it impacted 22 different countries that were either allied with Germany or under German occupation. It took place from everywhere from France to the middle of the Soviet Union, and it resulted in the annihilation of somewhere in the neighborhood of 5.7 to 6 million Jews throughout Europe. And it is probably also, in terms of the nature of crimes, it probably is structurally the most public, the most prominent, and probably the most technologically sophisticated genocide that the world has ever known.
And when
let me just say, what is its relationship to contemporary situation? One of the problems we have today is we have an abundance of hatred. And the haters feel empowered to express their hatred. And furthermore, they have something that had never existed before. They have the megaphone of the Internet, and they also have the communities that are established by the social support networks. Consequently, we used to think of isolating the haters, that we could quarantine them, we sort of could contain them. And today we live in a situation in which not only can they not be contained, but we see essentially that hatred expressed somewhere gets replicated and promulgated elsewhere. Let me give you a very concrete, very personal example. Actually it's the year before last year was the year of COVID. My daughter goes to Syracuse University. Syracuse had an outbreak of racism and anti-Semitism. And then one day, somebody dropped on cell phones throughout the library the screed, I don't want to call it a manifesto, the screed of the killer in New Zealand. So what happened in New Zealand then gets reflected in the halls of a library of a very distinguished university. And how do we know about the screed of the hater in New Zealand who shut up a church? Essentially, we know it because of the Internet and because of all the publicity that ensued in its aftermath.
So okay, if I'm listening to this conversation right now, and I'm an African American, I'm saying me too. I'm saying me too. I understand the plight of the Jewish people in genocide, but then I'm saying me too, because if we talking about reparations for past and present, and we want people to tune into this conference, this discussion tonight, I'm saying is, how does that relate to the plight of African Americans in America, Black people in America? Because we can certainly empathize and sympathize with other nationalities and other situations, but what about us? Because although we didn't experience genocide in that way, shape, and form, we were enslaved, and we were one of the few peoples that were ever enslaved here in America. So why would I be interested in participating or tuning into this conference tonight?
And Tamara Fish, I want to talk to you about that, as well as Dr. Berenbaum. But first of all,
Michael
I
is
want
fine.
Michael, but I have to say, evil is evil, and the rise.
Amen.
And
but why would I want to? I'm asking the question, why? And this is what people out here are thinking: is why are we? Why would I want to tune in to this conference? What am I going to get from this as an African American in America saying, me too? Me too. I want reparations for past and present situations. Why do I want to watch this? Why is this relevant to my plight and my cause?
Well, I'll tell you. I appreciate the question, and it is an absolutely excellent question. It's essential. I also appreciate that this radio station is affiliated with a university, with HBCU universities. Reason being is this. Hatred knows no boundaries.
That's right.
If you study history, and even if you look at what's happening around in the world today, it's not as if people are like, oh, I hate Jews. Oh, you're black? You're okay. That's fine. I'll let you pass. Or Latinx. Oh, you're not Jewish? That's fine. I'll let you pass. Hatred mushrooms and grows and distorts. And that's why Niemöller, the pastor that stood by and watched the destruction that happened in Germany, was able to create that poem. I don't have it in front of me that says, first they came for the Jews, but I wasn't Jewish, so, I didn't do anything. Next they came for.
Let me recite it because it goes, first they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the communists. I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the Jews. I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. And finally they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out.
Precisely. So when hatred mushrooms, it will encompass black folk.
It will encompass. Right now, it already encompasses black folks. Today, they are in the midst of the trial of Ahmaud Arbery, who was hunted down and killed. We already encompass. So I'm asking, once again, I asked the question. We understand that everybody is vulnerable to hatred. But what this discussion is for reparations past and present. And so I'm asking, what about me too? What about African Americans?
Because no one listens to the solo voice of me. People listen to the collective voice of we.
But we're not talking
about. And in the same way that Jews have got to be as open and as supportive of work that dismantles anti-black racism, likewise, blacks with anti-Semitism. We need each other to get through this, because we will not get through this by ourselves. It's too big.
Let me suggest another reason, which is very simple. If you understand how reparations benefited Germany as a whole historically, there might be a much greater openness to reparations in the United States. And that is that Germany had a tremendous dilemma in the aftermath of World War II. It had crimes had been committed in the name of the German people by the German people, using all of the instrumentalities of society in order to commit those crimes. And Germany, we have to remember, was the most sophisticated, the most culturally advanced, the most scientifically developed. It was the nation of Goethe and Schiller, of Bach and Beethoven, and they used all the instrumentalities of society in order to annihilate the Jews. By the way, not only the Jews, but a whole range of people were targeted for persecution. And the question becomes, how do they deal with this past? How do they shape their future in a way that is radically different? And one of the things we can learn is that they engaged in reparations to the Jewish community, and those reparations essentially were developed as an instrumentality not only to help the oppressed, but to help the oppressor, and help the oppressor come to terms with their past and understand what its implications were. And we found a very interesting, there was a fiery debate within the Jewish community. Some called this blood money and wanted no part of that money precisely because it was blood money. And others said, this is going to offer them absolution. And instead, we've seen historically that what it's done is to offer Germany a way back to create a society that was dramatically and radically different than the society of Nazi Germany. So reparations helped not only the oppressed, but also the oppressor transform their society and build a better society. Now, if you understand that historically, then you raise the question of reparations as a means not only of helping the African American community and those who were formerly enslaved, but also as a means of having America find a way to deal with, to grapple with, to struggle with. And we're seeing this as a prominent issue in society today. This is one of the reasons, it's the reason that we have a great deal of division. It's one of the ways that America can confront its past and can find a way to go forward acknowledging its past and transforming itself so that the past becomes past and not a blueprint for the future.
Thank you, Michael. And Tamara, tell us what we can learn from the experience with reparations given to the victims of the Holocaust. How would that look today? Back then you were able to see the victims, but how would it work today?
Well, you have landed on the precise issue why I have entitled my talk, The Problem with Reparations. And I'm going to go there. The problem with reparations, but not in the way that most people think. You see, I think we have presented the issue incorrectly. It's not the reparations for slavery. It is the reparation for the legacies, plural, of slavery. Mm-hmm. And that requires a reckoning with history. And we are just seeing within the last, I'd say, 2 years, America beginning to grapple with the histories of black people in this country, ways in which we have been living legacies of slavery, whether it's been through policing, whether it's been through the American version of pogroms, which have been, for instance, Red Summer, right? 1919, at least 60 towns and villages burned or otherwise destroyed by marauding white gangs on pretenses, right? We have to first wrestle with and embrace as a people this history as an American people. And then we can look to the reparations for the legacy of slavery as that type of healing. And I believe that Dr. Berenbaum is directly on it. We frame the discussion of reparations as if it's transactional, right? Something given to black people, when, in fact, it is a healing for the nation. something to wrestle with, not unlike a type of Truth and Reconciliation Commission writ large. And that's how we need to broaden the scope, broaden how we understand what reparations should be. That's how we make it modern. That's how we make it now. That's how we make it part of the American fabric and not just the story of black people in America.
So would this be money given to the descendants of slaves in this country, or would it be given to black institutions?
I tell you what. Again, we have to start to think about legacies of slavery, ways in which black people were systematically excluded. Mm-hmm. And that's not just simply about being a descendant of a slave. That's about being systematically excluded mm-hmm. from major programs when they started, such as the GI Bill, how it was almost impossible for the majority of blacks who served in World War II to qualify for those very programs that made breaking into the middle class so much easier for white people, whether it was through home ownership, right, the loans, right, whether it was through college education, right. Just look it up. Read on this history. Another federal policy, right, the Housing Administration, the underwriting for grants and rather mortgages. We hear about redlining. How many people know that was a program created by the federal government?
So how do we make it right?
It takes a range of creativity, which is why saying writing a check is not sufficient.
Well, I'm going to say this about this. I'm going to say this as a professor of political science at a historically black college. This is not a complex thing. America's not even wanting to talk about critical race theory. We would have to rewrite the history books. They still don't want you to vote. There are 18 states that passed restrictive voting rights laws. So all of this here that we're talking about is plain and simple. If we really wanted to fix it, we could fix it. We would deny the ability to own property and educate. We decreased the funding for historically black colleges. I wish I could have been on this panel in these types of discussions. And I think you can't have one of these without one of me. Somebody like myself who studied this from a different perspective, who can engage in it and who can ask the type of questions. I'm all for multicultural. We had Arnie Falco on yesterday. I love the program. I love the efforts. The combining of the Jewish community with the African American community. I love these things, but we have to talk about both stories simultaneously and talk about a joint solution, not just the history of one people, but the history of all people. And I think that's what we need. That's where the focus needs. And I understand this panel. I understand it's an academic exercise. I understand it, but I'm just presenting a different perspective. That's all.
And I think we're all on the same page. We are coming together because if we allow ourselves to be separated, then we play into the hands of the haters, the racists, and as Michael pointed out, you'll be the other. You know, you might not be the other now, but you will be the other at some point. You'll find yourself on the other side of the haters. I mean, hate. When it metastasizes, it takes over the entire body, and I'm really concerned that we're seeing that happening today. And Michael, would you agree that this is a turning point for us?
Look, we not only see an increase of hate, but we see a celebration of it, and that is that there's a feeling that this is an authentic expression. Have at it, give at it, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Look, we have to, in one sense, look, I'm a pain in the posterior historian, which means that I believe that the way that you chart the future is to look also at the past.
We have to. And I want to tell everyone, because we're out of time already, I could talk to you both all day, but we want to let everyone know this is something that you want to tune into. There's going to be a live Zoom tonight. It's open to everyone. It's at 7 p.m., but you need to register. Just go to jewishnola.com/HBCU, and you'll be able to hear more of the discussion about reparations, past and present. Thank you so much, Dr. Michael Berenbaum and Tamara Fish, for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're listening to WBOK 1230 AM, What New Orleans is Talking About.